Welcome to one of my favourite light tanks within World of Tanks, and quite possibly my favourite one, at least for being an aggressive light tank in the game, and that is because the T-54 Lightweight, which is the feature of today's video, is amazing. There are many reasons why this vehicle is superb within the game, and we're going to showcase exactly why in this replay right here, and we're going to see what this thing can do in probably one of the nicer matchups, and with the kind of everything going in your favour. And then we're going to take a look at a slightly more aggressive gameplay where maybe it isn't so calculated and you're just trying to have pure amounts of fun. In this replay, of course, we are top tier, so we are not facing any vehicles that are lower tier, and I think that makes this tank a hell of a lot better for the most part, especially when you compare it to a lot of the other vehicles that you'll come up against. And I guess that's something that you guys have probably noted about the T-54 Lightweight if you've played it, and of course if you have, let me know in the comments, and if you haven't, let me know if you've come up against this vehicle and what you typically do when you see someone driving at 78 kilometers an hour in a tank that weighs the same as a T-54 pretty much. So the key thing about this tank, for those of you that don't know, is of course the heaviness of this light tank. You're able to ram things with amazing effect in this vehicle because you are of course a T-54 that can effectively, as we've already mentioned, go super fast, and because you can go super fast, it allows you to go off in, attack opponents right away, and also go around them and use kind of the knowledge of the game to your own advantage. And that's why the T-54, in my opinion, is the best kind of aggressive light tank if you want to play it in that way. Now, you can see in this replay we're going to move forward towards the tank destroyer here. It's a T-30. I believe that they actually have 3 marks. Now, this was gameplay done before the 3 mark glitch happened, so it's not during that period of time, so the player is obviously knowing what they're doing in the game. Now, he obviously tries to get hold down. There's not much you can do when you're in a T-30 with terrible damage per minute, and especially when you're fighting against the mediums and light tanks. You can see he's not going to bother turning around. There's no point. That's what you should be doing if you are playing tanks like that. I believe he may even just have 2 marks, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, definitely a good player, and it's nice to see him out of the game and we can progress with our own game in this one. Now, the E75 moves up towards us. We don't want to make sure, well, we don't want to be taking that hit, and I foolishly drive straight into the tank that we've just got rid of, and at this point it's time to make an aggressive push towards the E75, because if we don't, we're going to get shut down pretty quickly, and we don't want to give him the advantage given the fact that that thing has about 490 alpha. You can see the quick turning of this vehicle to be able to quickly switch directions and try and get behind him, which we do to great effect. The alpha damage of this vehicle also makes it quite nice. I believe it's 250 alpha, and so things like the E75 don't really have a chance when you continue pummeling them from one side or the other, or then just secretly just sneaking away. There's absolutely nothing they can do. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is that we're able to quickly rack up a few enemies, and in this game we now have a couple of choices. Do we just YOLO at the enemies that have kind of moved down, or do we try and take a bit more of an interesting approach? Now, the Scorpion probably wouldn't have hit us unless we tried to quickly change direction there, which is a bit unfortunate. But nonetheless, now we're in a hot pursuit of a T-54. Now, one thing you'll notice there is that we only took 60 damage but dealt 180 to the T-54, which showcases that if you put the right equipment on and you use the heavy tank spool liner, and then you're able to reduce the damage from ramming and even ram heavier tanks than you for way more damage than you'll receive. Don't get me wrong, if you try and ram a mouse in this thing, it's not going to work at all. But if you are thinking about maybe ramming light tanks, medium tanks that are kind of not British, typically the British are super heavy comparatively to the rest of the mediums, but things like you're looking at light tanks, even some of the heavier light tanks in the game, and even if you come up against another T-54 lightweight, if they don't have the perk set up in the vehicle, then they aren't going to be able to have the same damage when you ram them, and in fact you can deal probably double the damage of any of those light tanks that you see in the game. And often, if you can full ram a tank with this vehicle, you can actually full health them if they're like a light tank, if you're coming up against those French light tanks, any of them basically. If you can manage to do that, then it's really, really easy to come out on top. Now, unfortunately, as I usually do in light tanks, go a little bit too fast, a little bit too quick to one side, and I end up flipping, which is flipping annoying, but nonetheless we now can move towards the opponents, and it's not too bad when you can travel at 78 kilometers an hour pretty much everywhere. You would notice that this tank doesn't really get affected by terrain, it's purely just if you make a stop, which is really nice, which means that your terrain resistances are low and it allows you to get into positions where you can just go forward and harass opponents really nicely. And that's what I love. Obviously, the more aggressive a light tank can be, or the more consistent a light tank can be, then you're going to have way more consistent games. You're going to be able to do way better, and that's kind of what I like. Now we hit the Skoda T50 there, which is nice. Definitely the one that we want to be getting out of the game as quickly as possible. The Skoda could finish us off, so we go for a little cheeky shot there. Unfortunately, we don't manage to hit him, and that is really annoying. Now the Skoda obviously thinks that, I don't know, I've just disappeared for some reason, and he's now looking in the wrong direction, and we finish him off, taking one of the probably more dangerous tanks at the end of the game out of the game itself. So, having come kind of reasonably well within this game, picking up 4,300 damage in a light tank, probably not the worst game you'll ever see, and 807 assistance is a very, very good game indeed. And what we want to do from this point is just be very safe. It is not a guaranteed win, it's 4 tanks to 3, of course one of them being artillery. Now if we can spot for the artillery, or potentially just help him out to get some extra damage, then that will be perfect. We take a bit more of a long route, I'm going to go over this way, and then maybe we can get from either behind them or use the hill area to just spot them, and then artillery can potentially do some work. The Conqueror on our team is doing very well, using obviously his armour or something to be able to withstand both the Type 4 and the other heavy that is over there. We've got the Type 4's side of turret, but I want to get rid of this 53 TP as he's pretty healthy, and I cannot guarantee a pen on the Type 4 because the standard penetration of the T50 with 4 lightweight is not particularly great. Nonetheless, artillery actually finishes off the Type 4 because tier 7 artillery being absolutely balanced and absolutely fine. But yeah, very, very nice. We of course spot the Type 53 TP, but we don't get the final damaging hit on him. But we do manage to pick up 4,500 damage and 890 assistance within this replay, which is very, very good indeed. I really enjoy playing the T54 lightweight. We'll check out a second replay in just a second, but obviously you can see we got 20,000 silver, and if you took advantage of the on-track / premium bonus that was going towards the T100 LT, then you'll know that this was an amazing time to actually jump into the vehicle and get that extra silver and also XP every single game. So that's kind of what I used to grind myself to the T100 LT, which is the tier 10 light tank that is probably one of the better tier 10 light tanks in the game. Now then, we're back in the T54 lightweight, but this time on Campenberg, or at least the version of Campenberg that typically the T54 lightweight probably shouldn't be doing as well as you expect it to, considering there's not that much room for movement, considering this is a massive map. Like, the amount of effective area of the map that you can use as a light tank is pretty limited. The spotting potential of this tank is very good if you're on the move and actively scouting. It's not as good of a passive scout as some of the others that you'll probably see in the game, but you can definitely make it work. Now, the T41E1 decides he's going to YOLO in. I absolutely have no idea what he was trying to do there, but nonetheless we'll go after him and hopefully finish him off. We'll do a little bit of a side swipe here, and we managed to hit him. We probably didn't need to do that, but it was more for just the fun value, and that's kind of what the T54 lightweight always does, and it does it really well. If you're interested in getting yourself a light tank that actually can just be a bit of a YOLO wagon, a bit of fun, and also very good in its own right, then yeah, this tank is probably perfect for that. You can see here, we're just trying to retrack the E75. If we can do that, maybe it'll take some damage and we can get some assistance. The E75 obviously kind of permatracked up in the air. If we took the higher ground, we could probably hit its lower plate, which is angled up, which means it's less effective for him. But nonetheless, we managed to kind of go for him continuously in the tracks, which is what you want to do if you want to get some assistance damage. And we're not bothered about trying to go for the kind of YOLO shot into the lower plate, because we probably won't hit it, and it's more effective for us to just continually track, although we don't manage to hit him with that shot. And now then, in the meantime, the enemy team have pushed down the left-hand side, and given the fact that we are in a bit of a stalemate here, or at least it looks like the majority of our team is in one singular square, then we're going to have to do something, break out a little bit, and try and do something different. We're going on the move here. You can use the T-54 lightweight on the move firing, because the APCR rounds definitely help out with that, the shell velocity of them, so how fast they'll take to reach the target. Is much better with this vehicle comparatively to if you had armor piercing rounds. So when you're on the move, you're able to hit more consistently, as well as the fact that the accuracy on the move is really good as well, especially if you put vertical stabilizers and you just have all of the accuracy perks on the vehicle at the same time. Now, we're going here for a bit more of an aggressive approach. You can see the Aguila, the German tier 8 light tank, kind of sat out in the open in the river. I don't know if he's going to actually end up finishing himself off, but we'll see. Driving into the map border, the Aguila actually takes himself out, which is typical light tank player. If they're not throwing themselves away into the enemy team, then they're usually throwing themselves away. But nonetheless, we will take it, and it means that we're going to be in a better position to spot for our team and not have to worry about the enemy team light tank spotting us as much. So from this position, I'm deciding maybe it's time to actually go off in, since there's nothing really going on in this flank, and if I can just spot the enemy team, then that'll be good. The Paladin over here is taking a little bit of damage. The CS tries to come out, and what we want to do is just not be too aggressive to the point where we're going to get hit by everyone, but we definitely want to be outputting damage where we can and just being a nuisance to the enemy team, because even if it means that the enemy team are focused on me and not hitting me or me doing any damage to them, it's taking up their time, of which our team can kind of counter them by getting into a position to deal with them whilst they're focused on me. So although necessarily the damage numbers and stuff like that rack up within the games can be very, very a good indicator to show that someone has had a really influential game or what have you. Often you can actually have a very good game for your team by not having to even get damage, or at least not having to get a lot of damage, because if you're doing absolutely nothing, it's not going to work. But if you can get yourself into good positions at the same time as kind of moving forward and progressing the flanks and just being a little bit of a nuisance for the enemy team, then that is definitely something you should be doing. You see the Paladin here, he's going after us, obviously turning towards us, giving the back of his vehicle to everyone else, and he gets shut out by the SDRV 103. The T41E1, who's thinking that he's absolutely funny with his autoloader, is deciding that he's going to come towards us. We then actually don't use the auto-aim, or at least try to free-aim it, but then decide since he straightens up that we can just auto-aim him anyway. We're going after now the CS and just progressing this flank. You see what happens when you quickly break through a tank line with this vehicle is that they all kind of crap the bed, and they end up not really knowing what to do or who to target and that sort of thing. So you can see us just going now forward towards everyone. You can see the accuracy on the move of this vehicle being very, very good. I often free aim in this vehicle. We don't see it too much in this, but I would always implore you to actually free aim if possible. And we shut down the RU-251, the enemy light tank at tier 9. And yeah, a really, really good result from the point of view of breaking through using a light tank how it's supposed to be played, especially an aggressive one like this. Might not be the highest damage result, but we ended up similarly with nearly the same amount of XP as the previous game, but having done about 2,000 damage less. But a really, really fun one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and are taking a look at one of the more aggressive, one of my favourite light tanks in the game. If you want to request any specific tank, then leave it in the comment section down below. But if you're not interested in any specific, then why don't you take a look at the gameplay and tank reviews playlist that showcases loads of different tanks or modder tanks and what they're good at, what they're bad at, whether they're actually worth getting. A lot lot of premiums as well as actual tech tree vehicles. And if you're not interested in that and you want to learn how to get better at World of Tanks, use some of the camo, concealment, stuff like that, then the gameplay kind of how to get better at World of Tanks playlist is the one on the left. Hopefully you join me in one of those videos, but if you're not, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.